This is Eric Campbell. You can find me at ericcampbell.com.
This is Brian Walker with Image Armor Pretreatment and Inks.
Johnny Shell with SGIA.
Scott Fresner with T-Biz and Network International.
And you're listening to Two Regular Guys
Podcast,
hosted by Terry Combs
and Aaron Montgomery. Anything but regular, nothing but extraordinary.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, everyone. It's Friday, June 22nd, 2018. I'm Terry Combs with Equipment Zone. You can also find me at terrycombs.com.
And I'm Aaron Montgomery, and you can find me at aaronmontgomery.info. Today, we're bringing on our producer, as you see here, Eric, to help us discuss all things prosumer, hobbyists, crafters, whatever you call that booming market segment. And because of Terry's recent crazy travel schedule, we've been really putting Eric to work. So, Eric, thanks again for joining us. How you doing today?
Doing great. And honestly, I'm happy to be here. This is a subject that everyone in the embroidery world especially is interested in because we have a real stake in discussing this market. And as we've all introduced ourselves, I'm Eric Campbell. If I jumped right into it because I'm so passionate about this subject. You can find me at ericcampbell.com. And also, apparently, you can find me here.
At tworegularguys.com all the time. Absolutely.
It's happening.
All right. Well, Terry's coming to us from a hotel or some random place somewhere on the earth, and it's
I am. I'm
a game called "Where's Terry" as opposed to. But
I'm actually at the Ohio University Inn in Athens, Ohio, and this is day 10 of my 12-day journey all over Ohio. And
wow!
I'm going to shoot home Sunday night, and I'm going to leave again on Wednesday for Orlando for the Sir Speedy franchise show. So, Eric, clear your schedule on Friday because I think you're up again.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's talk a couple quick news items. There's been a few kind of big things going on that I think are worth talking about. The one thing that I saw, and I saw this in the, I think it was Wearables magazine or something from ASI there. And so the Supreme Court has ruled political swag ban is unconstitutional. And we'll have a link to the full story here. But the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down the Minnesota's ban on political apparel at polling places in what can be considered a huge victory for the promotional products industry. In a 7-2 decision, the justices declared last week that while some forms of advocacy may be excluded from polling places, Minnesota's law was simply too broad. So those of you in the promotional products world, that's a big win. I think a big win for all of us that are in that space selling decorated products. So, Eric, what about you? What'd you run across, or what have you been dealing with?
Well, as we know, the Supreme Court ruled Thursday that states can now compel retailers to collect sales taxes even if they don't have a physical presence in the state. So this is a 5-4 decision. States now can levy those taxes even when the companies don't have a brick and mortar location in the state when you're doing e-commerce. So though 31 states already levy online sales taxes of some sort, this is likely going to prompt the other 19 states to alter their laws and bring those taxes in on online sales. So really more to come on that front as things develop, because as we know, those of us who deal with e-commerce on a regular basis, that this stuff can get pretty hairy and that individual states have different ways of handling this thing. But this is definitely going to impact us. The big people, everybody says, okay, what about Amazon and eBay? They've got the money to cover this. It's really us. It's the independents who are out here selling in e-commerce that are going to have to watch this. So everybody keep your eyes on that one, and more details as those things develop.
Yeah, I think the big guys, the Amazons of the world, the Skynets, they're going to have the infrastructure to handle it, and the rest of us as small retailers are going to have to. Well, hopefully somebody's going to come up with some processes that are going to make it easier for all of us to handle this as well. So, hey, there's an opportunity for some software company out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I was an accountant or in that realm, I think I would be scrambling to be the first one to come up with some solutions to make it easy on businesses out there.
There are some big services doing it already so that it can be subscribed to, but it's something that's a little hard for the smaller people to deal with. So hopefully we can get some large services to kind of get that integrated, and that remains to be seen.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, my news item today is not so much news as it is a shout out. It's to all the folks at NBM, the show staff there. they really hit it out of the park with the show they just did in Cleveland this past weekend. Every vendor I spoke to was surprised at the turnout and the quality of the attendees as well. So beautiful convention center right there in Cleveland. I haven't been in Cleveland in years. Right next to the baseball field, and we went down there to catch a game actually with the courtesy of ACG Equipment Finance, and and hey, I now have a Cleveland Indians hat. So thanks again to
Nothing wrong with hats.
Exactly.
I'm not sure I've ever seen you without a hat, Eric. But
There's reasons for that.
Well, that's thanks to Chris and his wife at ACG. They went to get food and drinks and came back with hats for the Equipment Zone crew. So it was very, very kind of them. Craig Mertens at Digital Art Solutions said to me after the show, he goes, "Man, this should have been a 3-day show because NBM." And we talked, a week or 2 weeks ago, about trade shows, and NBM's trying a lot of different things. They're doing some 3-day shows, some 2-day shows, and boy, they really found a great location in Cleveland. Now next year it's already scheduled to be in Columbus, 2 hours south, but we'll see how that all falls out. And again, my congratulations to the NBM staff. You did a great job this past weekend.
Cool.
Nice.
Great. Excellent. Good report there from Terry's ongoing road show. And all right. Well, I want to make sure everybody stays tuned to the very end here. Terry's going to tie in our subject today with 5 things. 5 things to consider when going from part-time hobbyist to a full-time business. And so excited to hear that. And we've got lots of live viewers right now. So please let us know who you are. Tell us where you're coming from. Give us a shout out. Say hello. And we are excited to hear your comments throughout this discussion today.
Absolutely. And look forward to your participation. Thanks to everybody who's listening, either here on Facebook or through our podcast channels. We are so pleased to bring you this weekly show since February 2013. We're well into our 6th season. We always try to avoid the rants and the lectures and the selling, and we would love for you to visit our webpage. It's 2, regularguys.com. Check out the show notes from previous podcasts and, of course, today's podcast. We always have a lot of great links and additional information there. We are always looking for suggestions for future shows, and you can do that through our Contact Us page or through our social media outlets. We're everywhere at 2, regular guys. If you are watching us live right now via Facebook Live, we would love to have your comments, insights, questions, and suggestions about today's topics from the show. And we want to thank our lead sponsor, SGIA, as the Specialty Graphic Imaging Association. And you can head over there to their website at sgia.org/join to sign up to be a member and to find out about our trade association, SGIA.
Absolutely. And I've got their webpage up on the live video feed right now. This is sgia.org/garment. So you can check that out. Two notes there. The expo is coming up in Las Vegas in October. And so you can get signed up for that. And make sure you sign up, register for the education. Just come. This is the biggest show every year for our industry, and it's a fantastically run event by the folks over at SGIA. So that's number one. The other point I wanted to make is there's Johnny Shell posted on Facebook today that he's actually on his way to Louisville right now. And the reason he's on his way to Louisville is SGIA is kind of the coordinator of the Skills USA competition for screen printing and sublimation. And that starts next Wednesday out in Louisville. So I'll be driving over Tuesday night from St. Louis here. And so definitely stay tuned to all the social media channels and everything else going on there, because I can't wait to see what these kids do this year. They get better every year, and they are the competition grows, and Johnny does a fantastic job. So skillsusa.org, I think it's skillsusa.com to check that out, but looking forward to that. So good stuff going on there. All right, guys. Well, should we dive in? We've got a few people joining us here. Say hello, and there's one hello, and Sabine, I believe, is how that's pronounced. As people know, I am the butcher of names near and far. Rick, I can get Rick. I can do that. Rick, hello, good morning. And oops. There we go. Yes, Sabine, we'll do that. Nancy, hello from Ontario, Canada.
Very nice.
Wow.
Great.
Right on.
And yes, Sabine, she asked, could you please post the links, and we will do that as soon as we
Definitely.
get clear of this. Yes, soft in German. Yes, okay. I'm getting Nadine, or oh boy, yep. Nadia, anybody? You guys want to try that one out?
I think we're just gonna let you do this one.
Yeah.
We should get it. Let's just kind of flop around there on the hook.
I am like a fish out of water here, just flopping around. All right, let's get to this, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in and joining us, and sorry for all the butchering of names, but thanks for letting us have some fun. All right, guys. So today we wanted to have kind of a roundtable-like discussion on a topic that Eric actually suggested, and we wanted it to kind of be a battle. Let's no, not really, but craft versus industry. The crafters versus the industry. Battle Royale. No,
not at all.
We want to really talk about how the two segments affect each other, and is there really any difference, and what can we learn from both sides of that kind of thing? What can businesses learn from prosumers, and what can hobbyists and crafters kind of learn from the techniques that businesses use? And so the plan is to take questions that Eric put together for us and present them, and each one of us weigh in. But again, all of the folks joining us, please weigh in as well on your takes on all these questions, and we'll try to get as many of those posted and commented on here on the broadcast. So those of you listen to the podcast version today, you got to make sure you go over and check out the video in the show notes after the fact to see all of the comments. But Eric, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. Like I said, this is a subject that is very much near and dear to my heart because it's I've worked both in kind of the home art craft market as well as the commercial market in different places that I've written. And I honestly will answer questions for anybody. So it's something that comes up with me quite a lot. So the way I want to start this out is to just discuss the rising tide of hobbyists. I feel like there are a lot of entry-level decorators that have entered the market from this prosumer kind of hobbyist space. And honestly, we've seen equipment manufacturers and vendors in our space, at least what we considered our space, this industrial space, putting together machines and supplies and packages like you'd never seen us start decorating. Smaller hobby heat presses, sheet cut materials for vinyls and press materials. The prosumer market, how do we define them compared to, say, just an entry-level commercial decorator who might be, smaller in their uptake? Or do we see them as a separate part of this, or do we have them on the spectrum of people that we serve as people who educate and serve the industry in the different ways that we do, kind of day jobs and off? How can we and should we seek to integrate these prosumers?
I think, and let me jump in first here.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably a difference because, when I first was looking at this, I was writing this as hobbyist / crafter / part-time, and there's probably a difference there. I think the hobbyist or the crafter that's the person that maybe has an Etsy page and all I'm ever going to sell is onesies or something like that, and I'm just I'm gonna do that business because I have a passion for it, but it's never going to be that business that I want to grow into something full time, as opposed to someone doing a business part time. And I always think part time means I'm just wanting to get enough customers and enough courage to at some point do this full time, which means quit my job, quit my guaranteed income from a 9-to-5 job, quit my insurance plan, quit my IRA, quit my everything, and really put myself out there. So I think they're two separate categories. I'll let you guys comment on that as well. But here's my biggest concern, and I don't know if it actually fits your question exactly or not, Eric, but what I find, and I'm going to come at this from an angle of screen printing and direct-to-garment printing. What I find is that folks who want to do this, but hey, I don't want a big investment. I just want to do this on the side. They tend to get involved in products, especially with direct to garment. The cheapest direct to garment machine they can find, and it's going to be just such a nightmare for them because that cheap machine is guaranteed to be a converted over paper printer, which means that the inks you're using are not meant for that print head, which means you've got to run it every day, which means you've got to print a shirt every day, which means if you leave for a long weekend, you've got to take all the inks out, as opposed to a commercial printer where, my 12-day trip here, I could have turned off a commercial direct to garment printer when I left, get home on Sunday night, turn it back on, do a 38-cent head cleaning, and start printing again. So that's probably my biggest concern when it comes to that sort of thing. Screen printing, there's the U-Dos and all the kits, and what was the old one, Speedball, where you can do a few shirts and probably get away with it on that end. With screen printing, it's not as high tech as direct to garment, so you can get away with it, and you could probably get away with a tabletop screen printing device and maybe exposing your screens in the sun. It's a little easier, I guess, to be a hobbyist or a crafter in screen printing than it is with direct to garment because of the complications of digital decoration. So I don't know if I just went way off to the to the right or left of that.
My favorite part was that I'll let you guys weigh in, but and the way he went.
But instead of but, I meant eventually.
I mean, honestly, the equipment is a big portion of this, and I'll redirect. I know I've got to get Aaron in on this too. The thing is, to tell everybody, we have people from different segments here, because Aaron, he used to always say, well, I'm not a printer, but he's done a lot of work with sublimation, and he really has a take on that to give us. So Aaron's going to come in on sublimation. I've done a lot of sub, but we all know that I'm the embroidery guy here. We're going to come at this from different angles, and it's actually going to make a difference into these answers, I think. But no, I think going into the equipment, we'll talk about it again later, but it is a difference, because really part of this issue is if you're going to look for profit and efficiencies, eventually there may be more willingness to kind of put out that initial investment, because you're going to grow into that investment, and you may be looking for customers quicker. So I think that, yeah, there is a difference to the aims, even if there's not a big difference to the skills on the high end.
Erica, that sounded a tiny bit like, Terry, you probably should have read all the questions a little more carefully before you answered.
Oh, no, I just know that we're going to wander back in and out of these suckers like 3 or 4 times. There's no way we won't. It's a big topic.
It's okay, Eric. You can say, yes, that's the All right.
I'll also read the questions.
So going back to the actual question, how can we and should we integrate both sides? And I think this question to me, and I agree with Terry a little bit, but I'll disagree with him also in some sense that, he mentioned, people that maybe have an Etsy page or just kind of a passion for doing that. To me, I think that line's a little more gray. I think that, I think maybe they, like Terry said, that they don't have the complete confidence to get out there and walk away from all those great things, the health insurance, the guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever that may be. But they still have a passion for this decorating piece. And you know what, if all of a sudden one of their pieces blew up, if they became the next Mel Lay, for example, and if you don't know who Mel Lay is, she's been all over our industry stuff lately. Sandy Lake's Clothing, go look her up. She blew up, and she ended up on Shark Tank. But she probably started out in that front area. Now she was a stay-at-home mom looking to do something different, so maybe she didn't have the day job. But actually that's not true. She did have a day job. Stay-at-home mom is a day job. It's a night and day job.
You just avoided some slings and arrows there.
Hey,
it's true.
My wife's listening too, so I would.
That is a hard job, but she decided to take on some extra.
Take on even more,
stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
No, my point being, I think we do need to integrate them. I think the hobby crafter community can take advantage of the business side who have really perfected some of the techniques and help them avoid the pitfalls of, yes, I don't want to invest that much, but if I spend $200 and it's wasted, is that better or worse than spending $1,000 that's not wasted? Those kinds of weighing points. So that's my take. Eric, your turn.
My turn. I'll try not to run over this thing because this is so huge for us. In embroidery, it's very, very common, especially these days, to see people come from what I even will call prosumer machines, because we have these machines, like Brother puts a machine out, and I'm not going to malign the Brother machine, but for us, it looks a little bit like a toy. It's got a plastic shell on it. Now, the internals of that machine are a commercial machine pretty well, but it's like a machine that we would have run some years ago because it's a 6th needle, but they call it the Entrepreneur. This is absolutely how they market these machines. The idea is that you're going to be able to make a cottage industry happen, and especially when you get up into the higher prosumer level, you're not in the single needle machines anymore. And frankly, even with the single needle machines, they cost what a used commercial machine costs, and they have a lot of technology behind them. So with us, there's this drive to kind of move that way. And what you'll see in the embroidery market is people who maybe they do something as a hobby, they do pretty well at it. Someone will see it and say, I know you have this embroidery machine in your house. We need like 5 shirts for my little company, for this, local company. Can you put logos on shirts with that thing? And suddenly they are thrust into the world of commercial embroidery and they don't even know it yet. But the thing is, because digitizing, especially, and I being a digitizer, I have something to say about this, it's a skill that not everybody has, even in the commercial industry. A lot of people sub that all out. People in that kind of prosumer market will look for digitizers the same way that someone else does. They're paying for that service when they're in that prosumer or home market for craft stuff. So they've done a lot of the stuff they've already done. They're outsourcing digitizing. They know how to use materials generally. There's a lot of bad information that we're going to talk about later. But these people are doing work very much like a commercial job would be. And honestly, a lot of them want to do logo work. I mean, there's always the discussion about copyrights and things that you can't do once you get into a commercial sphere, and that comes up a lot. But when you're on home embroidery boards, the questions they have technically and the questions they have about work that just comes to them, jobs that appear to them, are commercial questions. So I think there's less of a separation. And like I said, I've got some other questions that we're going to go over later, so I'm going to step on my own toes. So it's not just Terry. But part of what happens to me is that there's a big bleed over in education and in service where I may be talking to someone about digitizing and the same people are using software that's equivalent to commercial software or that is commercial software, and they're coming to classes to talk to me about that. And like I said, we'll talk about it later, but the bleed from prosumer into commercial, at least in the embroidery market, sometimes is a real short jump. It really is the point of, I've got all the equipment because I pretty much have to do machine embroidery of any kind, unless I'm on the very cheapest end. I've got equipment that's fairly close, especially if they've gone to multi-needle already. Those machines can do commercial work. And people just get brought commercial jobs by being in connection with people, which is the way we do local brick and mortar marketing. It's word of mouth marketing. So it's like they're thrust into that business world sometimes before they even know it. The thing is, we have to talk about how we integrate. And for me, the integration is about taking the commercial processes, the commercial understanding we have, and especially when we're talking about business, because it's not every time we talk about this, it goes down to technique. Technique's great. Business is the part where we need to bring them in so that they both don't hurt themselves, even as hobbyists when they're charging for things, and that they come into the market as kind of good citizens as decorators. And I think that's good because sometimes they can also cause disruption in their market that is not good for them and not good for the commercial people around them.
Yeah, interesting. Hey, Eric, while I've got you here, we did get a great question in the comments section there. Suggestions on a multi-needle embroidery machine and the number of needles that is a good upgrade.
A good upgrade. Honestly, it's hard to say that because, number one, whenever I talk about recommending machines, I'm not going to give you a brand right now. The reason being that you have to have support for the brand. It's about, can you get a tech out to your location? And that's really, it depends on your location. Can you get a tech out, and what is it going to cost for the brand that you have? Because some brands aren't serviced by all techs. So when something goes wrong, how much is that cost of ownership when you get a tech out to your location? That's a big thing. That's going to change brand to brand, even if the machines are great. The other thing you're going to have to look for is specific features. Every once in a while, there will be a feature, but truthfully, commercial machines, multi-needle machines, They are absolutely good enough to do 90% of the work no matter what, probably 99% of the work no matter what. If they're in the commercial sphere, they're one of the big names. And honestly, some of the other machines will work fine, and you can even do some commercial work on home machines. So what I'm going to say is, I personally like to be at 9+ needles. I love 915 needles. Why do I like that? Because I remember starting on a commercial 6-needle machine and how much we needed the other colors. So, so honestly, I don't like to go a sub 9 myself. Really, the machines now, you get 6-needle machines that start out for those home machines that are like commercial machines, where the innards are essentially commercial machines, those like the one from Brother I mentioned. But after that, you go up to the commercial machines that are like 15-needle machines. And that's, if you're going commercial, I like to see that. Plus, the commercial machine is going to have a larger sewing field, and trust me, you want the largest sewing field. You want the largest one you can afford. So when you're looking at it, look for your sewing field, look for your features, and definitely look for support. Also, look for not only official support from the manufacturer, but for communities that surround the machine, so that there are other people using the machine. It's not always going to be about support from those folks. It's going to be about the other people using the machine who can help you out when the official support isn't available.
Nice.
So I do have an article we can link to. I see people are talking about it.
Yeah.
And you're right, techs, great sources for used machines. This is also true. Used machines, be careful, because you can buy yourself into a money pit. It happens. Make sure that machine's been serviced by a reputable tech if you're going to do that, and look for those big names. But definitely look for support. Support on all fronts is the most important thing, if you ask me, though, because if you go with any of the well-recognized name machines, and I'm not talking about the ones you buy off of random, Chinese import sites, those can have a lot of issues depending. You buy a fairly well-known name machine, you're going to be okay. I mean, I've got my favorites, but it really depends on how close you are to getting a tech in, and what's that going to be, that total cost of ownership.
You can name names, Eric. It's really okay.
No, I won't.
All right. Hey,
we're not selling or ranting. Somebody told me that earlier.
Well, you're not getting paid by them, so you're not selling. So
I listened to the other questions.
All right. I just wanted to mention some comments that happened while you were talking there, Eric. Just for those of the folks listening on the podcast, Jeff said, that's perfect advice, Eric, and the techs are great sources to find used machines. I think that's worth mentioning. Jan said, I bought the machine I did because of location of tech. Honestly, 18 years ago, I went on a hunch. That's great advice.
Good call.
And I'm not even going to try the name. You guys could try some of these names. It's fine. So true. More needles, the better. So
it's good for setting up colors you're going to leave on all the time, and for those of us who do fine text, putting 60 weight thread, thinner thread, and thinner needles on a couple of those needles and leaving them on all the time is great. So yeah, that's what it'd be good to have more needles for, but you can't always do that.
Yeah,
and that's all right.
And then, Christine Tree from Enmart mentioned a good source to find a machine can also be your suppliers of threads and such, which they are. We get asked all the time for recommendations, and since our parent company has machines, we know what we recommend. And
Enmart. I'll say that Enmart, you have to remember those folks are from Ensign Emblem. If you don't know, and Ensign Emblem, really large producers of badges and patches. They know what they're talking about. That's why they use those materials. So talk to Christine. She'll tell you more.
All right. Hey, Terry, you can wake up now. I think we're done with embroidery for just a moment. I know my eyes were glossed over because saying things that I was like, huh? I don't like needles in general. It scares me. That's a different story.
I'll add one thing to what Eric said too when he mentioned used machines. I tell people all the time, hey, I have no problem at all with used equipment. But the only people who should be buying used equipment are people who are already in the industry, because you know what you're looking at. Yeah. If you are brand new to the industry, I'm going to strongly recommend you go buy new equipment that has support, and because you do not know what you're getting if this is your first machine.
Yeah,
that's so true. I have to finish that up. Last comment on this. The problem is you never know when you're looking at your skills and your techniques with a used machine or a machine that you're not real sure of the provenance or how it works. You could be fighting problems with the machine and not problems with your technique, and think that you're doing poorly when the machine's fighting with you. So that is a good reason to get a new machine that's well done, or a serviced used machine. So I'm with Terry on this one.
Yeah, right. You don't know if it's you or the machine, and I'm just gonna add this. It's probably you.
All right, guys. So
And it has been all of us.
we're just now through question number 1. There is a time limit on this. Just
All right.
a gentle reminder. Awesome, guys. Great information. And again, thanks to all the viewers for their sharing of stuff.
Doug.
And I've been popping those up in the video. We haven't had a chance to actually mention every single one of them. So again, get over to facebook.com/2regularguys and check that out if you're catching the podcast version to see all the comments and weigh in yourself, even after the fact. We love to have these conversations.
Sure.
All right, Terry, you ready for question number 2?
Question number 2. When addressing the hobbyist market, I think commercial decorators can sometimes feel like we're fighting the techniques and information that may work for a few pieces, but don't follow our practices for production. So what ideas from the business world do you wish hobbyists would take on? And also, what can and should we teach them? Aaron, you're up.
Yeah. I had to pause there for a bit because, I'm not sure if it's, again, I think I'm probably the one in this conversation here so far that is, to me, I think there's a lot more intermingling than we may understand, but that's just my own personal take. So obviously, like we've kind of already talked about, the techniques and doing things right is important no matter which side you're on. And so I guess, Eric alluded to it a little bit earlier. I think it is important to teach everybody the proper ways to do things, because if you're a hobbyist, a crafter, a prosumer, or if you have a commercial business, for me, you're selling sublimation. So if somebody gets this sublimated piece that looks like crap and it's on cheap goods and they've sold it to somebody, that person now is going to go, oh, sublimation sucks. This is what you get from it. But that's not true. It may have been that decorator didn't know what they were doing, or they, had a heat press that had cold spots in it, or they had inks that are heat inks and not sublimation inks, and so they wash out in a dishwasher for a mug, those kinds of things. So I think those are the things that we need to make sure that everybody knows on all sides of it, because I've been involved in conversations on forums in the actual business kind of groups where there's the question every day, hey, will this heat press off of Amazon work for me? And it's incredible to see how many people go, oh yeah, that's great, I've got that one. Well, yes, but how much are you producing with it, and what is the end product? It may work great for a couple of presses, but it's going to end up being a boat anchor. A heat press is definitely one of those things that we're always talking about on this particular program, that investment in a heat press, whether you're a crafter or not, probably a big deal if you're trying to do any of those heat transfer type things, sublimation or otherwise. So I think that's my answer to the question, is that I think we should be teaching the right techniques no matter what space you're in. And then we just got to figure out ways to make it affordable for those people that aren't doing this as a business. And understand that, hey, if I'm putting this stuff out there, I'm representing everybody. And that's a big deal, and we need to be true to that and be passionate about that.
I have to agree with you. I think, honestly, starting with technique, and that's really where we often start, because a lot of us, we've been in production. We want to start with technique. This is something that we're going to talk about. With embroidery, I'm frequently talking about materials, because really people use any kind of random materials. Stabilizer is the worst one. Anybody out there who's using coffee filters and paper towels and stuff like that, I mean, you may be getting a result from it, and sometimes you can. You might find that partially the reason you're getting a result is you didn't need that particular stabilizer at all, which is why it doesn't matter what you use back there. But part of the problem is that you use these things and it doesn't provide a reliable result, whereas commercial materials, they are more expensive, but they provide a reliable result. What does stabilizer do? It makes things more dimensionally stable, so they don't stretch in any particular direction. It helps make your embroidery look better and run better. It has less headaches. Once again, you might be fighting your materials or your technique when you really don't need to be, and it's pennies on each piece. So honestly, yeah, cheap stuff, it's not going to really help you out. But if I have to say what's the one thing we should teach them, yeah, absolutely, hands down, we can talk about technique. I feel like the business part of it for anyone who's going to sell, and I don't care if you're selling a couple pieces, I don't care if you're selling, you have an Etsy store and you're pricing something in a more retail fashion. We need to make people more aware of what things really cost, how they are priced in the industry, how to figure pricing, because I think they should figure pricing the way a commercial person does figure pricing, especially in the embroidery world. I know it's a sublimation the same way. We're used to 1 and 2 pieces. Embroidery, we've been personalizing and putting names on things since machines were there, because monogramming and names are really common. That's how it goes. And I know sublimation, same thing. Every piece, you have to press every piece no matter what. So it's going to be one-off. DTG, that's one-off. I mean, those are things where one-offs aren't the problem. I think it's more screen printing where people talk about, how that works. And you'll have to enlighten me on this, Terry, because I don't know like you do.
Screen printing is always the problem.
Screen printing is the problem. But
it's not the process, it's the messenger.
There you go. We're just going to give Terry the business the rest of the time about screen printing. Even though he does all this DTG training, here he gets all the business over screen printing. But we have to teach people business policies. A big part of it for me has been trying to teach people that the pricing can be about value, and it's not all just how much labor you put into something and how much materials you put into it, especially because so many people out there, I talk to these embroiderers, and they don't put any price on their time. Any price at all on their time. And if you are going to grow into a business eventually, let's just say, okay, say you're going to do it forever. Well, you want profit. You want to make, even if you just want to put yourself into a job, which is kind of, I consider almost the lowest form of how to do a commercial business. I'm going to make myself a job with equipment attached. You can do that and give yourself a wage. Let's say you want to grow beyond that. The first time you need to hire help, you're going to take a massive hit if you haven't thought about what labor costs. So knowing labor costs and stuff like that, that's a big deal. So factoring your costs and your overhead, one thing, even in a home business, you have overhead. The electricity is not free. The machine maintenance is not free. The materials are not free. And your time shouldn't be free if you're going to do this for anything. And honestly, I don't care if it's your weekend. Those are precious hours of your life you are not going to get back. Get paid for them if you're going to use them for commerce. It's important to do, and it's good. Like you said, Aaron said, we are ambassadors, and even the crafters are ambassadors of the technique they're using. Make it valuable and be good to that technique and good to the industry that's going to support it and that's going to bring you all the materials that you need to use by making sure you charge something that's worthwhile and that places value on it. You don't want to reduce the value of what we do. And honestly, I think of the crafters in a really high light, and we're going to talk about more about this, but I think there's a lot we can take from them. But the best thing we can give to them is to say, this thing that you are doing is valuable. I don't care if it's family. I don't care who it is. If you want to give a gift, give it, but don't underprice. Either give something away free or full price. Don't just discount. Charge something for it. Make sure that your time is valuable. And also, like I said, if something has intrinsic value, you've come up with a novel idea, something cool nobody else is doing, nobody else is willing to do, charge more because it has more value than just what you put into it.
Yeah. Hey, Terry, before you jump in, I did want to steal your thunder maybe, but I do think this is a huge point, that value and that pricing. So first off, KT, hello. Thanks for checking in. So let me ask these quick questions, Terry, and maybe you could answer them too, but I think, and how the industry deals, they corrected that, with shrinkage. And I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but if any of you guys...
Might be spoilage. Are we talking about spoilage?
That? Yeah. So maybe follow up to that so we can get that point for you answered. And then let's see here. Where's the other one? Sorry, there's lots of great comments. I want to get. So how do we do the business part?
Okay, number one, I'm just going to flat say we cannot, in the remaining 15 minutes we have to talk about this, tell you how to do the business part. That is a really big question. Yeah. The way you do the business part is marketing directly, figuring out your costs, and charging, and honestly doing that correctly, reporting your taxes, that kind of stuff. It's all stuff you need to do.
Definitely.
Small business people can help.
Eric, I'm going to jump on that because and maybe we'll let Terry kind of wrap this up because
absolutely.
Yeah, to me the doing the business part, the most important thing is truly understanding what your costs are today and where you want them to, when you're going to grow, if you are planning to grow, what are those costs. We've had lots of pricing discussions on this show, so a great thing to do is to go back and look at past shows that we've had where we've talked about pricing and costing and things like that. And then look at, the other people that are selling similar products. It's not a race to the bottom. It's not that I need to do these things, but what will the market bear based on your costs? And I think that's the best way to do the business part. So Terry, you jump in on the question finally, and anything you want to add there?
Well, I think what it comes down to is a subject we talk about on this show all the time, and it's education. And I'm going to guess that some folks who would be crafters, or I'm going to guess that they're not going to necessarily feel comfortable going to an NBM show or an ISS show or a DAC show, because hey, that's an entirely different level. But I would certainly encourage folks to do that, because just because it's not necessarily the way you're going to do it, you need to see how the professionals do the process. You need to understand that, and maybe it's going to, it's like I always say about seminars. If I come away with one fact that helps me or my business, it was worth sitting there. There are lots of things you can pick up on, even if you're working out of your third bedroom on the third floor, creating a product and having a better understanding of that marketplace. So, hopefully people come and listen to this show when they see what the subject area, and I think that they'll take away things that are going to help them grow, even if they don't want to ever say, "Hey, this is my full-time job. My commitment is every Sunday. I like to create something." You can still learn from the professionals out there and take advantage of it. And yes, there's going to be a booth you walk into that's filled with automatic screen printing equipment, and you say, "Hey, I print on a wooden press that I built myself in my garage." They may not want to spend a lot of time with you, but there are folks who will, and certainly in seminars, it's a great opportunity. So my answer, and we'll wrap that question up with, it doesn't matter what level you are in this industry. Education is key. Always education.
Yeah, definitely education, 100%. Hey, we're going to go into bonus time, so just deal with it, guys. Hopefully, your employers will be okay with that, because there's another great question here that I wanted to get to. Just briefly, is there software to help you with costs? And absolutely, it just depends on what you're doing and where you're at. Depending on what the project is or how you're doing things. Certainly, software. There's certainly lots of great. Our friend Marshall Atkinson,
I was just going to say that,
world, has written a book that he gives you Excel spreadsheets for screen printers to help figure out their costs, and you can take a lot of that into other areas. So absolutely, you just got to find what's kind of right for your area, and we're always happy to help point people in those directions. After the fact. So
I'll say embroidery specific, folks. We did an episode about it, and on top of that, I've got a free ebook that Deco Network puts out that's embroidery specific that will take you through a lot of the theory of how to do that costing, the cost analysis, and how to do value pricing. So you'll find, even if there's not software, there's a lot of people out there who will either give you like Aaron said, Excel spreadsheets that'll help you out, especially in the machine. The manufacturers do it. The only thing I'll worry about is if they ever tell you, "Hey, our prices for monthly leases are this much. You only need to make this many hats to cover it." Watch that number really carefully, because it may not take into account all your costs. So
Terry never does that.
No, Terry's good at it, man. Terry's talking. I'm like, preach, Terry, because he's going to educate you. He wants you to see. But yeah, get out there and look at that stuff too. If you're looking for embroidery specific stuff, the article, or both the piece we did and then that ebook that I put out, may help for some folks to figure out.
You had me at free, Eric.
All right. Jeff said if you start out, you need to go out and try to buy or get a couple of quotes on the things that you are going to make. That will tell you market price. Good suggestion there.
It helps.
Gives you a starting point.
Don't price by committee, though. Ultimately, because somebody who's got 100 heads or somebody who's got 25 heads or you with one head of embroidery equipment, very different things. So be careful about pricing by the people who are around you.
Yeah.
Might not be you.
It gives you a range, though. It does give you kind of
helps
somewhere
you figure out your area, but
it gives you a starting point. So, and then Cheryl mentioned the one thing people forget is wear on their equipment, and that needs to be factored in. Yeah, you, at some point you are going to have to, either service it, buy new equipment, and things like that, and that all has to be factored in, because if you're not planning on paying for that, when that bill all of a sudden hits, it's going to hurt. So good points there. All right, guys, we're going to finally get to question number 3, and I apologize for continuing. But these comments, this is what we want. This is we want this to be an interaction, right. And we want to bring this stuff and share. So I very much appreciate everybody who's been joining in here. All right. Have you personally experienced a crossover audience in your seminars / teaching? Eric, you start us off this time.
Absolutely. Unequivocally. This has happened many times. People come to me and they're very much in the prosumer market. I've even had folks come out and visit from out of state. They don't even come to see the rest of the commercial show. They come just to learn digitizing. So especially in my arena, obviously people have been. So there's a crossover audience, a huge crossover audience, because a lot of the technique, especially on the digitizing and setup end, the art end, is very similar. You will also see people who are in the commercial world either move to or dabble in the home world and teach, even to the point of I've seen professional digitizers that I've known go and teach in sewing shops across the country. So it's because the techniques are so similar, especially if you can learn the software knowledge. Software knowledge is something a help file can teach you. Knowledge of embroidery as a craft and how needle, thread, and material meet is pretty universal. So absolutely there's a crossover.
Awesome.
In my seminars, I'll have someone, and I can always tell they're really, really small, because they start with, "Well, I'm just a," and I have a full-time job. I do this on the side. I just love doing it. Someday, I want to turn it into a real business. That's where I probably see most of the crossover. Aaron, you and I were talking. I just spoke to someone in Cleveland. She's a bus driver, and she's going to get a pension from the city of Akron in 5 years. So she is going to drive that bus for 5 more years, so she has an income. But she wants to start a decoration business now, just so she can learn all the little eccentricities of it. So on the day she says, "Okay, here are the keys to my bus. Thanks for the last 30 years," she's going to be able to step right into a business. And I think that's certainly a group within this category of folks that I don't want to do this today. I can't do this today, but I want to know about it today so I can make that transition.
Yeah. That's a great point, Terry. Yeah, I've definitely seen it too. To me, it's all kind of grayed over to me. There's a lot of folks that I've had the fortune of working with that, like Terry said, they've got that day job. They're trying to make this work. I've worked with groups that, they call it pajama marketing. It's kind of the side business. Now, I hate that term because I think
because you don't wear pajamas.
I hate that term because I don't think that you can actually make a successful business that way. And that's what kind of concerns me is this side hustle. This I have my own business thing. The industry of selling to those folks that are doing that, the hobbyists that want to actually make a little money, the industry of selling to those folks is probably the bigger part of it. And people make a killing off of, I wouldn't say fleecing, but they go out, and say things that, boy, I just don't know are necessarily true. You can spend 30 minutes a day in your pajamas on your iPhone running this business. And if you're going to actually get to being in business, or you want to actually sell something and keep this thing going for you, old-fashioned hard work is never going to stop. So, right. That's, I think, to me, what the difference is. Are you willing to put in a little effort here and do this? Or do you just want to make some things for your grandkids or things like that? And both of those things are completely okay, but be realistic with yourself. Don't let somebody tell you that all you got to do is spend a few 15 minutes a day on your phone sending some Facebook posts and you're going to become rich and be able to retire yourself. That's not not the case. So that's my take on that crossover. Just be careful. All right, Eric. Well, what's the next question?
Yeah, we'll motor on through. I'll try not to jump back.
or jump back, either way. Like I said, we're going into bonus time, guys.
Hold on. The last thing I'll say,
say.
I'll do one thing then. Okay, like I always say, one more thing, just one more thing. No, one thing about the crossover in the audience and what you said about that hard work is you always know there's someone else working alongside you or against you. If you want to talk about competition, there is going to be work there, and if they work more than you, they'll be more visible than you, especially in that marketing space. There is going to be work. There's no way to get out of it. Every time someone tells me, like, it's like auto digitizing. Somebody says, so what software can I get that I feed an image into it and good embroidery comes out? And I'll say none. Not the most high-end software we can buy can make the decisions a digitizer can. They can help you. They can make you faster, but they can't make you good. And that's honestly anything we do here. Marketing software, there's great software to help you address different channels in marketing. None of it's going to make your message good or make you address the right people if you don't do any research. Yeah. A DTG printer won't make your art good either. There's always a segment of it where you're going to have to source it from someone who does the work or do the work yourself. And that's always going to be there. So be prepared. Same thing. If you don't like doing the business side of this thing, but you like the creative side, maybe partner with somebody who does like to do the business side, or you're going to have to learn to love some business if you want to make money, because it's just part of what has to happen. There's no dodging that.
Yeah.
Partnership's the best one. Aaron, did he in fact ask the question? Because I
has not.
No, I haven't. I'm still on.
He's continuing, but I want to continue on what you just said there, Eric, because it's a good point that you put on there. You said
I'll trade. You can have the soapbox for a minute.
Okay. All right. You said find a partner, and I think that actually is a piece that we haven't covered yet. Find somebody that can help you do these things. I was actually watching a program last night about Jack Canfield, and if you don't know who Jack Canfield is, he's the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, and lots of success books, and become a very successful publisher, but a great self-help person. And he made a really good point in that show that I was watching last night. He wanted to educate. He wanted to create the content. He didn't want to do the accounting. He didn't want to do those things. He wasn't passionate about those things. So what he did is he partnered with, hired, connected with people that could do those things, and then got out of their way and trusted them to do those things. So as you're growing your business, that's something that I'm working on with things that I'm doing. It's like, I can't afford to go hire somebody right now and give them a good wage, but I can look at services like Upworks or Fiverr and find the right program to get help with the things that, yes, maybe I could figure out and do, but that's not what I'm passionate about. That's not what I want to be doing. So that's my kind of spreading that question out further. So Eric, I'll let you ask the question if you're ready.
Oh, absolutely. I'll finish this topic that you're on, because I think it is important. And we didn't address it in the questions, but it's the same thing with outsourcing too. Absolutely. Outsourcing. You may also find that other people in your segment, as someone who came from a fairly decent medium-sized embroidery shop most of my years, we had small one-head in-house shops, at-home people working, that we fed orders to that didn't fit our market because we didn't consider them to be competition. We considered them to be another segment. And we fed them jobs, and they fed us larger jobs that they just took a cut off the top as middlemen. Outsourcing is not a dirty word when you're doing this stuff. So as you grow, think about that. We talk about how do we integrate. Part of how we integrate is having relationships between prosumer market and the professional market, and they can be beneficial to both of us, which actually does lead into the question for once. So here's the question. We're actually going to get to the next question. Though there can be some misinformation out there in the craft side of decoration, I mean, I already went over my coffee filter backing problems that I often hate. There are some things we can learn from passionate amateurs practicing out there. So you guys, I want to ask you first, what do you think we can learn on the professional side from these craft practitioners?
That's actually a great question, Eric. And a lot of us,
as opposed to the other ones.
This is a greater question than your previous questions.
Sorry.
This might be your greatest question ever.
I'll never be able to follow me.
No, I think a lot of us start out, and I talk about this sometimes in my seminars when I talk about when I had 75 production floor employees, and my son, one of my sons, went to work with me to write that report, what my dad does for a living, and so he's sitting in my office, and about 4 hours into this, he's asking me, "Hey, are we going to go to lunch?" And then he said, "So is this your job?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, is this my job?" And he goes, "Is your job to listen to people complain?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that is my job." And then I follow it with, when I got into this business, it was all about the creativity. It was all about creating things. And we commercial decorators, I think sometimes we forget that. And so we can take from those folks who are the crafters and the folks out there who have this really great concept, a really great idea. I think we can take some inspiration and motivation from their creativity and kind of bring us back around to, hey, you know what? That's why we did this in the first place. So I think that's what we could take from them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Terry. That is actually very well put. And I guess to expand on that a little bit, the other things that we can take from them is, I think sometimes we get stuck in this is the way things are done. This is how we've always done it. So we're going to, so that's how you have to do it. And and I think what some of the crafters, the hobbyists, the people, they're dealing with different circumstances. They maybe have smaller budgets, or they have, they don't have these things that we say you have to do, and they figure out how to make it work. And so I think we can kind of learn that piece from them, how to really kind of think our way around a problem and not just be stuck on, hey, this is the way we've always done it. And I think I've mentioned it on the show, but one of my favorite kind of meme type things of all times is this guy getting gored by a bull in the running of the bulls in Spain, and on the bottom it says, just because this is the way we've always done it doesn't mean it's not incredibly stupid. So I think we can take that from it. Think outside the box, think differently. Our world, the way things are sold, the way things are done, our world is changing faster than it ever has in the past. And so we can't just wait for things to catch up with us in the industry. We need to look at those passionate people that are out there making it work and go from there. So that's my take.
Well, Aaron, let me throw something back to you too, and I think this is in your realm. Social media, how difficult it is for the bigger companies in our industry to start using social media as a marketing tool, because they become so entrenched in how they accomplish things. Whereas, and you mentioned Mel Lay, who started her business in her garage intentionally so she could be home with her kids, but my gosh, she grabbed onto social media and became a social media darling because, well, hey, it's free and I know how to use it, and I guess it comes down to being flexible, and a lot of folks who are in that hobbyist marketplace have a lot more flexibility in those types of things as compared to that bigger competitor they might have.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Right, Eric, I mean, you're absolutely right. You both are. I'm sitting here like, yep. Once again, preach, hands in the air. You guys have the same stuff I want to say about it. The creativity, the fact that they can pivot quickly, which is something now we talked about this on last week's show. We were talking with Vic Autry, where he's like, the big companies are starting lean. They're not spending too much and they need to pivot quickly. What does that sound like? Like people who are just starting out and the hobbyists and the crafters. They don't spend a lot of money. They get in, they fail fast, they pivot quickly, and they look for new ways to do things. I mean, they're operating in a way that businesses can take from. And on top of that, I mean, part of the creativity, you'll see them do things with materials we don't do. Even when they're using professional materials, the stuff that we tell them to use, that we want them to use, they may use stabilizer in a different way. They may use the materials in a different way. I mean, it's really interesting the kind of things they'll do. One of the things in embroidery, I tried something like this in commercial embroidery really early, and I wish I'd followed through with it. They do things called in the hoop projects, where things are assembled by the embroidery machine. And that became stuff that people did commercially later. Like right now, there's a big trend in the home market for making these zipper tabs or keychains out of vinyl, where you sew a name on, you put a border on it, you can cut it out in a contoured shape, and there you go. There's a product, and it's made all on an embroidery machine and cheaply. we could do that on a commercial scale. If we looked at those kind of products they make, that's brilliant. Some of those things are brilliant. And I did. I had a customer who needed to do samples for mock-ups for luggage tags. What did I do? Pretty much the same thing that a home embroiderer would do with an in-the-hoop project. So, I mean, these techniques they use, even though they might not scale all the time, they may do something we can take from. And honestly, the way you use materials, fabrics, the way they do appliques for embroidery, they have a lock on creativity we may not have, just because they'll spend the time doing testing. And how many times have I, in the commercial realm, had to fight for testing and for people to actually test things out and work with new materials and find out how they work and write down their results? Home embroiderers do this naturally. They have a tendency to do it. The thing they're afraid of that they need to learn from us is that sometimes you waste material to learn things, and you can't just be worried about being cheap with that. When you're forming these new things, you have to use materials and forgive yourself for the failures. But those people are natural testers, natural at trying things out and recording their results so they can do it again. So honestly, we need to learn for their creativity. But really, the business world, we can learn from them being able to pivot. We can learn from that passion. And the other thing is, they are really great at one kind of marketing in particular, niche marketing. And this is something we've talked about a million times. Whenever I talk about niche marketing, I tell people, hey, go to somewhere you're interested in already because you have deep knowledge of it. What do these people do, especially in home embroidery? I've seen it a million times. What's their first commercial job ever? Well, my husband's in the shooting club and he does historical cowboy shooting, and they want to put revolvers on the collar tips of their shirts. And she's like, how do I figure that out? So now that's going to be her thing. Or I've had a guy recently who's like, I'm military and I'm often have a lot of downtime and I'm sitting here in the base not doing a ton of stuff and I don't have much to do. I want to learn how to make honor patches. I want to make flash patches and patches to trade. And he's like, how do I get into that at home? And he started a commercial business making badges at home. And he started on a really little home machine for probably $7,000. But this guy is now looking for a commercial machine. This is something that happens to people all the time. He deeply understands patch trading in that military context. He's going to make patches that those people want. The people who are doing cowboy shooting, it's a real specific thing. They know what kind of designs they want. I might be able to digitize any 6-gun they show me. I won't know which one is the one they want. They will. So they know niche marketing really well. So we can take from them the understanding of the niche, the passion for that stuff. And honestly, in our own lives, we should take things we're passionate about and do that niche marketing, especially small business people who are starting out. Look at the hobbyists and say, look at how passionate they are and how they develop products. They develop it toward a need they understand they have. That's something you can't beat for your initial run at niche marketing, and it teaches you how to find and farm a niche later, even if you're not involved in it.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple quick comments I wanted to share here. Jeff said, sometimes starting out, we need to make all the same mistakes that you guys have made early in your careers. Lots of value in that experience. Not saying don't learn from others, but sometimes the why is more important than the what. And absolutely, it's just like,
Sure.
you have to, sometimes you have to experience that a little bit yourself. And so a very good point there. To be honest, that's all I like to do, to try new things and to move on to the next. And absolutely, that's kind of like Terry said, we get into it for a certain reason. And if we are not careful, and we may get pulled to something else that's not that same thing. So keep it fresh and keep it moving. Good stuff. All right, guys, we're definitely already in bonus time, but we've got one more question, and then we got to close out the show. So, Terry, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, absolutely. As professionals, what do you think is the first step you should do before any hobbyist who wants to make the jump to the commercial world, or even who just wants to start as a part-time paid decorator? In other words, make some money doing this. And this is kind of my 5 things. So I'll let you guys run with this, Aaron. How about
Well, I can just go down and read your 5 things.
Yeah,
and it'll be done. Okay. All right.
Steal from the 5 things.
Yeah. All right. I'll be quick about this because I want to definitely hear what Terry's got to share with the 5 things. B, I think we've covered it a little bit in the previous sections that we've talked about. I think the first thing, though, is to understand your costs. What Eric brought up, I think that's a big point. And then the second thing is, to me, to also find those partners, find those areas where you can get help from somebody else, because to be able to have a successful business, to be able to do things, there are going to be things that you can't do, or you don't have the time to do, or you don't want to do, you're not passionate about. And I do think that that's a huge thing. Something that I'm really learning right now. I like to do it all. I like to be involved because I don't think anybody can do it as good as me. That's not true, but I think that's where I get myself stuck. And I'm never going to get there if I keep that mentality. So I've got to stick with the things that, is intrinsically my best features of things that I can do, and get some other things going from other folks and see how it goes. So there's my take. Eric, your turn.
Well, I'll follow right on that, because I think Aaron's got really good takes on it. They are absolutely right. And I'll actually make it a little more higher view than that, from a little further away. You have to know yourself really well. It doesn't mean you're going to know exactly where you think your business is going to go, but know ahead of time if you really want to grow this thing into something big. Not that you're going to make too many different decisions than you would be getting into your first shot, but if you are going to go commercial and you really feel like that's in there for you, make those investments. I mean, even as a high-end hobbyist, I think you're going to do better with commercial level equipment. I really do. I tell people who, once they want to get to that level, go ahead and look at that first. You're going to be happier running something that has those capabilities. However, in general, listen to yourself. You know what you want to do. You know what's there. So know yourself really well first. That's a big deal. So that's in the business section, that's in the professional section, that's in the creative section. You will know what you want if you think about it, but take the time to think about it. Don't just jump. Don't just buy when somebody says the first special that you hear. And I know we all do sales, so that scares me to say that too, but because I want to sell products that I'm working on too. But really do give yourself a little time to think about it. Don't jump too quickly when it gets exciting. Know yourself before you go into it. Because truthfully, all of us who sell, those of us who've been in the industry, what we want you to be is successful. What we want you to be is where you want to be. We want to get you there. So that's what you need to think about first, is know yourself, know what you want to do. Yeah. And that's going to bleed into all of this. So rather than belabor that with more points, I'll just say that start by really thinking through where you want to go, what your passions are, and how you see this thing going. Because that's also what we call a business plan, folks. It's also what we call purpose-driven marketing. Yeah. All of these things come from knowing what's important to you and where you see yourself going.
Definitely. Awesome. All right, Terry, do you want to take this, or do you want to save and just bring your 5 things? Your choice.
I'm gonna do my 5 things, and before we go to commercial break, Aaron, I'm gonna repeat something that my now 18-year-old daughter, she turned 18 last Saturday. She says, "You be you."
You be you. I like it.
You be you. So great conversation, guys. I love what we did here today. But Aaron, it's time to hear a word from our longtime sponsor, Equipment Zone.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Our show today is sponsored by Equipment Zone. Go to equipmentzone.com for the Epson F2000 direct-to-garment printer. Equipment Zone is the only Epson reseller who sends a technician to every customer location for training. This is an absolutely free visit to your location. Equipment Zone is also the manufacturer of the #1 pre-treat machine in the industry, the Speed Treater TX. With no compressor and no special tanks, the Speed Treater TX is the easiest and most consistent pre-treat machine available worldwide. Go to equipmentzone.com for the Epson F2000, the Speed Treater TX, and for all your DTG inks and supplies. That's equipmentzone.com. That's equipmentzone.com.
All right, we want to thank again Equipment Zone for being our sponsor nearly since our very first show, and Equipment Zone is going to be announcing next week 3 more DTG Academy dates and locations. So we'll bring that out here on the show. And Aaron, how about some events that you have coming up?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing that, again, I've been talking about this for several weeks. And first thing, I want to thank Eric for joining me last week. I put on a Small Business Saturdays, is what I call it, every Saturday morning-ish, about 15 to 30 minute session where just tips, tricks, information, conversations, things like that. So it's on my business Facebook page, where you can find me at facebook.com/aaronmontgomery.info. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to move it to a little later time slot, still trying to nail down the exact best time that works, but going to do a little sublimation Q&A session, and got some great questions from the folks over at A&E Magazine. So going to address those and hopefully address any questions that any viewers have. So that's the big thing I've been working on. Eric, what do you got coming up?
First thing I want to tell people, go check him out when he does that stuff. Whenever one of us does a Q&A and we've been in the business a minute, that's like getting free consulting. So jump in on those Q&As and ask, because it's the best free money you're going to spend because it's just your time. Go ahead and go check out what Aaron's doing. Second, as always, you can find my latest articles in Printwear Magazine. Got one in there every month in the States, or if you're in the UK, some of you folks are out there, UK, rest of the world, check me out in Images Magazine in the UK, and I've got one monthly there too. You can reach out to me at ericcampbell.com. You can find me at Deco Network, where I'm always putting out content working with those folks. And you may want to watch the Wilcom blog upcoming, because I've got a segment on Caps and Embroidery Studio 4 that should be coming out fairly soon. So watch that stuff. There's always more technique stuff I'm talking about. And if you can't find me anywhere else, reach out to me, ericcampbell.com.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to be at the Sir Speedy Franchise Show in Orlando. That's next week, June 28th and 29th. So I will briefly be home, do some laundry, and go back to the airport. My next complete screen printing business course is going to be in Phoenix. It's going to be at Workhorse Products. That is July 21st and 22nd. You can sign up for that and find out about all my upcoming events at my website, terrycombs.com. And you can find all those links under tour dates.
Yeah, absolutely. Terry is everywhere. So people check him out, terrycombs.com, and make sure you catch him when he's in your region, because he is all over the place.
You just got to try to find him. Again, where's Terry?
Where's Terry? Yeah.
Oh, come on. If you ask somebody where Terry Combs is, they'll point him out. We all know Terry. Come on, people.
Just listen for him.
Anyway, with that, let's go ahead and let Terry have the floor, because let's go with our favorite segment, and it's certainly my favorite segment every week. It's 5 things.
All right. So today it's 5 things to consider when going from part-time / hobbyist to full-time. Number 1, do I have the money set aside to replace my current income for a period of time? Number 2, is there growth potential with my current customer base? Number 3, does my pricing reflect full-time revenue or hobbyist revenue? It's something that Eric spoke about here. Number 4, do I have the support of family and friends? It's really important to have that kind of support. And number 5, do I have the 24/7 drive to make it happen? So those are my 5 things to consider.
Awesome. Well, excellent 5 things. I think that summarizes and wraps up our conversation nicely today. Thanks to all the commenters, the folks that listened in live. That was huge. We're getting some thanks right now for the show, but it was made much better by you guys. So appreciate it. Love same time, same channel, pretty much every week, guys. So catch us next week. And when we talk to some folks, well, I'm going to mention that in just a second, but I just wanted to say thanks to those folks before
all right.
letting Terry take this floor here.
And we want to thank our show producer Eric Campbell for coming on yet again, and also for out there beating the bushes looking for new guests for the show. We really appreciate it. You can find Eric at Deco Network. You can also find him at ericcampbell.com. That's ERICH Campbell.com. E-Rich. There it is, man.
Once per show, folks. If you're new, expect that.
Yeah. We also want to thank our sponsors, the Specialty Graphic Imaging Association and Equipment Zone. We very much appreciate your support.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, next week's show already, but we're going to be hosting Lori Anderson, and she's the president of the International Sign Association, ISA. And we're going to discuss with her what's happening in the world of signs and how our worlds intersect too. We've been having some fun, obviously, crafters and intersecting, signs and intersecting. I think, Terry, you can confirm if you're not going to be able to join us. You're bailing on us again for a freaking paying job. Really? Unbelievable.
Someone's got to pay for these airline tickets for me.
Where's the love, man? You sold out, Terry. Wait, we all sold out. We're all commercials. Sorry, folks.
All right, guys. Hey, well, until then, he's Eric Campbell. He is Aaron Montgomery. I'm Terry Combs, and we are the two regular guys.
Thank you for listening to Two Regular Guys. Check out our website at tworegularguys.com. That's the number 2, regularguys.com. You You can also interact with us over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/2regularguys, or send us a tweet, twitter.com/2regularguys. And we have a YouTube page. You can find all that from our website, 2regularguys.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to spending some time with you again next week.